you say you were waiting for the number 7 buzz?
There was that school of thought that said, why in the world are we celebrating this idiot on a park bench?
Tom Hanks is everybody's favorite good guy. But will he ever break the mold?
I won't play the Unabomber when that time comes.
When a T-Rex eats a person sitting on a toilet, I promise you it's not personal.
Steven Spielberg is the most successful movie maker in history. Over the past 20 years, he's given us all a few nightmares. But what frightens him?
It was scary for me. My heart was beating. I didn't know what he wanted to do. He wouldn't tell me.
They're always lying in wait for me to have an accent.
Meryl Streep is America's leading lady, but 20 years ago, she was almost forced out of drama school.
I was put on academic probation for a lack of ambition.
I'm a hick redneck from Missouri. I'm trying to beat De Niro, you know, something going. You know, that look?
The looks, the attention, the success. In his first major television interview, Brad Pitt tries to figure out why him, why now?
There was that feeling as a kid that you were being prepared for something big.
That's all I have to say about that.
Good evening. I'm Gene Siskel.
And I'm Roger Ebert. We've been reviewing movies together for 20 years. And in celebration of that fact, tonight we'd like to talk to some of the finest talent we've seen on big screens like this one.
And so we have interviewed an actor, Tom Hanks, an actress, Meryl Streep, a director, Steven Spielberg, who we believe are at the very top of their professions, and also a young actor who we think has a legitimate chance to achieve the same level of stardom, Brad Pitt.
We begin our conversations with America's favorite actor, Tom Hanks. He's the classic everyman, the good guy who shows us the best and the most heroic in all of us. He's appeared in 22 movies and is one of only 2 performers to win back-to-back Oscars for Best Actor. Hanks is obsessed with outer space, so we met at the Griffith Park Observatory high above Los Angeles to talk about acting, success, and a classic movie about space that changed his life. You've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, what, 20 times?
Well, I've seen it projected in a real theater probably 30 times.
Why 2001?
Because that was the movie that was that kind of transcendent experience that I think everybody has had if you love films. I was 13 years old and went to the Cinerama Dome in Oakland, California. I loved space anyway at the time, so when I saw it and saw this film, it was sound and light captured on film in a way that I had never seen before. The entire theater just kind of went, ah, and I wasn't even sure what I had seen. I wasn't sure what the movie meant, but all I know is that I had went through something that was akin to a religious experience.
Was something forming in your mind now in Oakland, California? You're a teenager that maybe movies are in your future?
No, not at all. Absolutely. I mean, who would think of such a thing? No more than, you know, playing center field for the New York Yankees. It was far beyond my realm. It wasn't until later on that when I started acting in high school and college that I viewed perhaps being able to make a living as an actor. But that was in the theater.
Was there a moment when you realized you were good at it?
At the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival in Cleveland, Ohio. I wasn't even the guy in the scene. I wasn't the guy spouting out the lines, but I had some degree of business or whatnot that was kind of so pure and so technically ideal that I thought, oh, holy smokes. Maybe there's a reason I got this job.
Can you think in your career moments in movies when it was just blessed?
There is a scene where I'm giving testimony in Philadelphia, which is, if you look at it on the page, it's a monstrous. Like, how do you commit this to memory, much less make sense out of it? But I think I just kind of sat down a couple of times with Mary Steenburgen on the set while we were setting up for it, and just kind of like, we popped it back and forth just once, and when it came time to shoot it, even when I was doing it, I thought, this is a transcendent moment for me, because I'm not even thinking about the mechanics of this. It's just spilling forth.
I've heard of a thing, a gay plague, the gay cancer. We didn't know how you could get it.
We've been talking about some of the great moments you've had, but you once said that sometimes when you look at your old movies, you occasionally can catch yourself doing the same cheesy old things. What are the cheesy old things?
There's a lot of moments where, you know, I'm supposed to be either romancing a girl or, you know, getting a job or something in some movie where I can see me doing this kind of, you know, half look away, half eyes to the sky kind of trying to slip a moment in the back door as opposed to really aggressively grabbing moments. Some of the best direction I've ever got was, man, that was horrible. That was just god-awful. Please do it in a real fashion. That's kind of like a slap in the face. I don't think I really knew how to be an actor in movies until I had made at least half a dozen of them, or maybe even a dozen of them. Up to that point, I was just trying to get by on you know, cheap tricks and bad habits that I had learned, you know, in the school of survival.
Penny Marshall wanted you to do what you describe as hundreds of tests before you made Big, and I presume she probably used the same style in A League of Their Own.
Yes.
And you said at one point that you wanted to tell her, I cannot do this one more time.
I can't visualize the words anymore, Penny. I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah. I can't visualize the words. It's gobbledygook. I sound like I'm just going to sit here and say gobbledygook, gobbledygook, instead of saying the scene that I'm supposed to say. Yes, I can't do this dance. I can't.
We have touched a nerve. I think this is probably just exactly the way you said it to her, right?
Yeah, it was. I did liken making it big to filmmaking by attrition. We would just shoot until they were, okay, we can't shoot anymore. Why? We ran out of film, Penny? The camera broke? That's the only reason? But you have to look at the end result, and so that's Penny's modus operandi, and you can't quibble with it.
When you won your first Oscar, and you went to the parties, and I suppose you and your wife celebrated, and you carried it around and posed for pictures and so forth. And finally, at some time early in the morning, you must have finally come home and taken off your shoes and sat there looking at it. What did you think?
It was as close as getting the Nobel Prize as I'd ever get. But the next morning, I mean, I was sitting on the breakfast table. We stuck it there. And after that amount of importance sort of sinks in, I sort of said, okay, now the thing that I have to do is disregard it. I have to now forget it. And then you have to forget about it. Then you have to put it all in its proper place because you gotta, what are you gonna do? Weld it to the hood of your car and, you know, and drive it around? There's not much
an idea.
You have to put it in its rightful place, and it's up on a shelf. I've been nominated for 3 times.
Big is the other one.
Big was the first time. And I'm, you know, lost to Dustin Hoffman. I'm glad that I had been through that experience prior to being nominated again and winning. Because then, you know, the vast amount of horrible nervousness and anxiety was sort of spent already because I hadn't been there. And really, I wanted to win just so it wouldn't be that disappointing. So there'd be a, you know, so it'd be a really good date with my wife. Philadelphia was all the stuff that surrounded the hoopla. That was truly a surprise. I thought that, you know, I had a shot to win.
Beckett, come in.
I thought that, you know, there was a lot of things that were sort of like revolving around it. But in general, it was a very special and cool moment. The following year with Forrest Gump was not the polar opposite, but was not quite as special and cool. The movie had been in the public eye for what seemed like forever. I was Forrest Gump. I was always kind of amazed and perplexed by the nature of the attention that the movie had because a vast amount of it was negative or derogatory, simply because it was making so much money. There was that school of thought that said, why in the world are we celebrating this idiot on a park bench who doesn't learn anything from his environment? I honestly wondered, what movie were they watching? The thing about Forrest is that he did learn about life. He just learned it slower than everybody else did.
There is something, kind of an American quality about you, or okay, now don't get this wrong, there's an ordinary quality.
Yes. I could never be as cool as James Bond, never in 100 million years. Nor could I be as angry as George Raft, you know, I could never be as shifty as that.
A lot of actors say, gee, I'd rather play the villain, it's more fun.
I think that there are versions of villains that you can play. I honestly don't think me playing a psycho killer, you know.
I don't see it.
In all honesty, I wouldn't see any fun to doing that. There's no reason for me to play a vampire. I think that there's no reason for me to play, you know, a crazed loner assassin. I won't play the Unabomber when that time comes. No. But you know what? There'll be that time when there's going to be a smiling, glad-handing bank examiner who is in fact crooked as crooked can be, and you won't realize it till the very end of the role. And I'll play that, and then it will all make sense.
Mm-hmm. Is there an actor you've seen on screen or in old movies, somebody you admire, not just because you enjoy the movies, but you say, that is something I like being done and I think I could do it myself or learn from it?
Robert Duvall. It's some way of inhabiting the role and not caring about time or timing, but at the same time having impeccable timing. Say, for example, you could say to me, "What do you have for lunch?" And the line that I would say, I'd like a turkey club on whole wheat. And Robert Duvall will say it. You know, ask me what I want for lunch.
What do you want for lunch?
I'll have a turkey club on whole wheat. Now that's different than, what do you have? Well, I'll have a turkey club on whole wheat. There is just something that he does that is off speed and off kilter that does not draw attention to himself. That when I was in college, I just thought, now, that is acting.
Your first real box office breakthrough was Splash.
Yes, indeed.
And that kind of set a character for you that you then played for a while in various ways.
That kind of secondary character, the kind of guy who shouldn't be the lead, but yet, I'm quoting your review of the movie.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I thought about that movie.
Now, you must understand that we all know who, you know, Siskel and Ebert are. To be an actor in a motion picture, knowing that Siskel and Ebert are going to be reviewing your movie. And I'm in a movie now, the first movie I've ever been, that is being celebrated on, you know, it's doing very well, and it got great reviews, and it's better than you could ever possibly bet. And here they come, and okay, he doesn't like it, and he doesn't like it, okay. All I'm saying is, Roger, it stung. That's all I'm saying. It stung.
You've got 2 Oscars, you've made 18.
I did okay to spite you, Roger. Sometimes it's very worthy to get that, it's always very worthy to get that other opinion. You know what? You take a shot. Yeah. You take a shot, you swing away. It's like, if you're lucky, it's like baseball. You know, we do this every day. And sometimes you do well, and sometimes you don't. You're talking to the luckiest man in America, because I still get to play.
Coming up, Hollywood's reluctant hero.
Very uncomfortable with the whole looks conversation.
Meryl Streep's scene that's kept them guessing.
Any woman will tell you what that scene is about, but I'm not going to do it. You ask your wife.
And Steven Spielberg, the master of light.
Turn the light off.
Meryl Streep and I went back to our mutual alma mater, Yale University, to the place where she learned the craft of acting and became the most celebrated graduate of its prestigious school of drama. In one of her old classrooms, she traded war stories with the soon-to-graduate students who were thrilled to meet her.
Do they still have evaluations here where they line you up one after another?
No. What was that?
You would come in this room and they'd line all the actors up in each class, and the faculty, one by one, critiques you.
What was the meanest thing somebody said about you?
This was a teacher, married, who asked me out the first week of school.
Oh, that's nice.
And I didn't go out with him. One of my classmates did. And they ran off and got married. But during that year, he was very hard on me. He told me I was cold and unfeeling and couldn't cry. So I showed him, didn't I?
And show him she did. Since leaving Yale, Streep has appeared in nearly 30 movies, earning the stunning total of 10 Oscar nominations in less than 20 years, ranking her with no less than Bette Davis and Sir Laurence Olivier. Our interview continued at a favorite student hangout, Frank Pepe's Pizzeria, where we tasted the sauce and the highlights of an extraordinary career. When was the last time you ate here?
1975. I was 3.
You were a hot ticket here as you were concluding your career in 1975.
Yeah, and it made me really nervous. My second year, I was put on academic probation for a lack of ambition, the requisite amount. Because I'd gone into the dean and said that I was cast in too many plays. It wasn't very equitable because I was picked over and over, and there were only 12 people in my class, and I was playing the lead over and over again, and people were mad about it. And I'm greedy, but not in the extreme, and I loved my classmates, and I didn't like feeling their anger. I went to the psychiatrist here at Yale because A, it was free, and B, I was going to graduate in 4 months. But he said, don't worry about it, in 4 months it'll never be as bad as this. It'll never be as intense. You'll be in competition with the other 200,000 members of Actors Equity, and believe me, it'll be a relief, and it was.
We all appear in plays, grammar school plays or whatever, camp plays and all that.
Yeah, my first performance, I was in a box. It was Madam X. I was a robot. And so I had no stage fright or anything. It was just the ideal way to, sort of go out in front of people for the first time.
How old were you?
5th grade. It was a wild success. We ran once.
But the obvious question is, when did you know, at what age did you know that you could do this?
Probably like my sophomore year at college. I was in a play at Vassar. My friends all came, and they all sat in the front row, and they said, man, you should do this, you're really good at this, and it felt great. I don't really like to stand up in front of people and talk, but somehow being in this play was a private thing. I mean, I think I lost consciousness in a couple of moments, and that sense of freedom, that sense of abandon, and is something that I loved.
You once told me years ago that you have a technique of keeping a secret about a character. You keep it from your co-star, you keep it from your director, it's your own private agenda. Kramer versus Kramer. You remember the secret?
Yeah.
And what was that?
Well, the secret was I never really loved him. I didn't want him to know that because it would have affected everything about the way he played his part.
Joanne, please.
And I don't love you anymore.
Streep won an Academy Award for her performance in 1979's Kramer versus Kramer. She won her second Oscar for Sophie's Choice, the story of a woman forced to make an impossible decision in a Nazi death camp. As you're having to choose which child you're going to sacrifice, that must have been difficult to know what to do.
Yeah, I couldn't read that scene. I read it once, I think 8 months earlier when I got the script. And I never read it again.
Because?
Because it upset me. And so I didn't think about it till we went to shoot it. And I didn't think about making a silent scream. But you know how sometimes when you have a dream and someone's in your dream, someone's chasing you and it's a dire thing that's going to happen and you need to call for help and you try and there's no sound that comes out. That was the thing that happened to me when we shot this scene. I was trying to call her and I couldn't. Nothing came out of my voice, my mouth. It's still a very upsetting scene. I mean, even to think about.
Her most recent Oscar nomination came for last year's The Bridges of Madison County, playing a classic lonely wife.
A woman, a sign of appreciation?
No, not at all. Except those are poisonous. I was happy that I was, you know, nominated playing a housewife. I felt like I was holding my own for all the housewives.
It was an extraordinary achievement. And what I loved about it is that it was largely silent. Were you aware of how little you talked in that film?
Seemed to me like I was talking all the time, and with an accent, which is always, they're always lying in wait for me to have an accent.
Well, I'm thinking of, for example, a very beautiful sequence when you meet him for the first time and then you walk back to your house and you touch your skirt. You're aware of that? Says everything, right?
It says different things to different people, you know?
All right.
What does it say to you?
To me, it says that she's excited, she feels herself. What has been a cloth is now a dress.
No, wrong. Any woman will tell you what that scene is about, but I'm not going to do it. You ask your wife.
Oh, come on.
It's about a lady with a big rear end who's walking away from someone that she likes. And she's self-conscious, and you always touch the part that you don't want anybody to look at.
Okay.
But it's the same awareness that you said. I mean, it is an awareness below the belt, maybe, that she hasn't had for a while.
I've heard you talk about sort of an emotional flexing. In other words, I'll take it in terms of athletics. It must be great to play basketball like Michael Jordan. I mean, it must actually feel good in the body to do that with your body.
But I don't think that they're great athletes are even aware of the power, and maybe they are. I don't know, because I'm not one. But it's not that aggressive a thing when you're acting right. It's the opposite. It's being susceptible to what is around you. And it's letting it all come in. Acting is a clearing away of everything except what you want and what you need. And it's wonderful in that way. When it's right, you're lost in the moment.
Coming up, Brad Pitt's first major television interview. And what did Steven Spielberg do wrong?
I can't get a job. Nobody will hire me. I've always liked shards of light. If you see any of my movies, there's light coming through windows, flashlight beams. That, to me, has always been my love of that hole up there that projects that really clear beam onto a screen and gives you an experience. I wanted to be part of the light.
For nearly 30 years, Steven Spielberg has been shaping and molding light into some of the most memorable images in movie history. And he learned at a very young age that there was indeed magic in the light.
Turn the light off!
My dad took me out to see a meteor shower when I was a little kid. And it was scary for me because he woke me up in the middle of the night. My heart was beating. I didn't know what he wanted to do. He wouldn't tell me. And he put me in the car, and we went off, and I saw all these people lying on blankets looking up at the sky. And my dad spread out a blanket. We laid down and looked at the sky, and I saw for the first time all these meteors. And it was a meteor shower that my dad wanted to show me for the first time. So that didn't scare me. What scared me was being woken up in the middle of the night and taken somewhere without being told where. But what didn't scare me, what was very soothing, was watching this cosmic meteor shower. And I think from that moment on, I never looked at the sky and thought it was a bad place.
We met with Spielberg at the offices of Amblin Entertainment on the Universal Studios lot, and there he explained how this childhood experience in the Arizona desert and later the divorce of his parents when he was 16 inspired two of the great movie classics of the past 20 years, Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T.
You said that E.T. was made in a way about your parents' divorce.
People haven't often written that E.T. is about divorce. For me, it was about my life, and that my parents split up when I was 15 or 16 years old, and that I needed a special friend and had to use my imagination so I didn't hurt so much. And my imagination was able to take me to places that felt good and made me move beyond the problems my parents were having and what sort of ended our family as a whole.
So this is a movie about a boy who needs a friend and who finds a friend. And then he has to do a little growing up in order to understand why the friend has to go home.
Yes. And E.T. comes into his life, and this little boy becomes responsible. He becomes a father to something who needs a father.
You should give him his dignity. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
You started making films almost from the moment that you could possibly make a movie. This is as if it were written in your genes that you were going to be a film director.
I really think the first movie I made was in an effort to, you know, to not get punished for breaking my trains, because I had these Lionel trains I used to smash into each other. And my dad once again said, if you break one more train, I'm taking the whole set away from you. And so I borrowed his 8mm movie camera, and I shot, I guess, what you could call the last big train wreck. You know, I shot it from all these, what I thought were pretty normal angles. I shot it from an angle of one train coming at the camera and passing, and then I'd cut, turn the camera around, and shoot the other train passing the camera right to left. And then I finally put the camera 50-50 where both trains would hit head on. And then I remember getting the film back from the lab. And I remember looking at the film over and over and over again, and it satisfied my urge to wreck my trains.
Well, your dad, who was your first producer, obviously thought you were a talented kid. I mean, he took your interests and your ambitions very seriously.
I think it was a father's thing to do, to support a hobby, and I think that's what he saw this as, because I know he kept saying to me, look, you can't take this seriously. You're not going to really go into the movie business because it's impossible to get a job in Hollywood. I hope you're going to become a lawyer or a doctor or an electrical engineer like me.
You came to Hollywood.
I moved to Long Beach. I went to college at Long Beach State College. But I used to sneak onto the Universal Studio a lot, you know, every day for a long time.
How do you sneak?
Well, I came on the tour, and I jumped off the bus, and I hung out watching him shoot some TV shows.
Nobody noticed you?
No, I was just somebody standing on the back watching television being shot. I'd never seen a real professional movie being shot before, or a TV show, so to me it was the greatest day of my life.
Now, the studio is set up to keep out people exactly like you.
To keep out people exactly like me.
They do not want teenagers hanging around watching people shoot television
Exactly.
shows.
What happened was I did notice that everybody was wearing a suit in those days here at MCA. And I took a chance, and I put on my, I guess what you call my bar mitzvah suit, and I walked past the guard, and he waved me through without checking to see if I had a pass. For the next 3 months, I walked on that lot 5 days a week and pretty much became an observer at the studio.
But he wasn't an observer for long. A few short, independently made movies later, he caught the attention of a Universal TV executive who gave Spielberg a break.
My first professional break, which was to do the pilot of Night Gallery, and he assigned Joan Crawford to me. Pretty much assigned me to Joan Crawford, because I don't think Joan Crawford was too happy with this idea of this kid directing her.
I can see.
I got through the show, and yet for some reason, after that show came out, hit the air, despite its great ratings, and it was a trilogy. There were two directors who directed other shows on both sides of mine. I was kind of I guess, the white elephant of the group, and nobody would hire me after that.
He didn't work for a year and a half following Night Gallery, and that's a long time in the life of a 21-year-old director. But talent eventually prevailed over youth. Spielberg was given a shot at another TV show, and then came his first major movie.
Duel was the feature film.
Duel was the feature film,
Express.
and then Sugarland was the first legitimate feature.
Yeah. And then comes one of the most successful movies ever made.
Jaws was the most successful movie of 1975. It gave Steven Spielberg the ability to now make any movie he wanted, and in 1977, he returned to his powerful memories of the light, the sky, and family.
I was really hoping that that movie would be a story about a character who has a choice in his life, and the choice that he makes is not the choice that I would make in my life today, but would have been the choice I would have made in the 70s when I made that movie before I had children of my own. And that was basically, would I give up all my earthly possessions and all my earthly relationships to board a ship from another world and leave Earth? Would I be curious enough to take that chance?
Would you?
Well, then I would. Now I wouldn't. I wouldn't probably have made Close Encounters the same way today. I wouldn't have allowed that character to be as irresponsible to his family to pursue his own obsession. And only because I think we change with family and children, and I'm not the same person now that I was in the 70s.
With all your success, you've still received a lot of criticism. What's the rap against Steven Spielberg? What do your critics say you're doing wrong?
Oh, he cuts too fast, his edits are too quick, he uses wide-angle lenses, he doesn't photograph women very well, he's tricky, he likes to dig a hole in the ground and put the camera in the hole and shoot up at people, he's too gimmicky, he's more in love with the camera than he is with the story.
But all that changed with one movie. Certainly, if you live to be 100, you may never make another film like Schindler's List.
I knew the Holocaust was the most important and yet potentially incendiary subject that any filmmaker can touch. And I needed to know that I was mature enough to tell that story, that I was ready to tell that story, that I wouldn't cheapen it, that I wouldn't try to sensationalize it in any even small way, that I wouldn't try to open it up for general audiences. Until I was ready to really answer all of those obligations, I couldn't make the movie, and the movie sat around for 10 years.
In the thousands of movies I've seen, there have only been a few moments that totally and absolutely reached me emotionally, intellectually, and physically at the same time with just a welling up of reaction. And one of those moments, of course, is the final sequence in Schindler's List, as the survivors appear and walk toward us. I can't imagine the film without that shot, but I know that it wasn't in the original screenplay. Where did it come from?
I was so afraid that, how was I going to validate this as being an experience that really happened? How was I going to prove to people that, coming from me, kind of like people perceive me as somebody that makes fantasy films and adventure films, how was I going to be able to speak the truth and not allow my existence in this project to prejudice people's opinions about whether this really happened or didn't happen? And about 5 weeks before wrapping the movie in Poland, I thought, in order to give some validity to this story, can I bring as many survivors as I possibly can get on airplanes, Schindler-Juden, to Jerusalem to just file past Oskar Schindler's grave and put a commemorative stone on the grave and acknowledge what he did for them. And I had my validation.
You made the best film of the year. The same year you made the most popular film of the year. It's a pretty good year.
Yeah, it was so weird. It was weird for me because I didn't think lightning would ever strike twice in the same place, meaning E.T. and then Jurassic Park. But what was interesting about Jurassic Park was that all kids everywhere, I certainly have, all my friends have been interested in dinosaurs.
Well, why do kids like dinosaurs? Why aren't they afraid of them?
Well, they're not afraid of them today because they're not around to terrify kids. They can't look into their second-story window and growl at them and smudge the glass with their breath the way the raptors did. They can't do that today. So kids really feel that history has protected them. Therefore, they can really indulge their fantasies.
If you could leave only one film for your children, which one would that be?
I would still leave E.T. for my kids, if I could only leave one film for my kids. Because I think E.T. is about something that has value for my children in how they are in their relationships. And when they grow up and they get married, do they pick the right person? Do they stay married for all their lives as I'd like them to? I think that's a value I'd like my kids to have.
Coming up, childhood memories shape a career.
There's no worse punishment than a look from a father who's disappointed in you.
I'm told that you come to this bar along with bikers and all kinds of people who take their bras off and all that. What is the appeal of this place to you, a place like this?
Just comfortable. It's like down-home music and down-home people. A little feeling of home, I guess. I don't know.
Brad Pitt's stardom carries a burden. After all, he's been compared to everyone from James Dean to Robert Redford. Today, he can't walk the streets of New York without attracting a mob, but his career didn't start out that way. The story is that your parents didn't know that you took off from college.
No, I never told them, you know. I never told them exactly. I told them I was going to school, although I have a feeling my dad knew. He knew something was up. And I called him about 6 months later when I started doing some extra work.
Now, you didn't technically know how to act.
No, and all the mistakes are documented on film, which I kind of get a kick out of because, listen, if anyone does want to get started and they lose faith one day, all they got to do is watch one of the things I hopped on in the beginning. It is bad.
Give us an example.
Let's see, this horror film called Cutting Class. Do something! I like it because it's a testament that you can learn anything, which is kind of something my dad instilled in me, you know? You can pretty much learn anything you want to do.
What would you cite as a strong point? Something that came easy. This I can do in acting.
This I can do? I think sincerity, I think. Is that too general for you?
I think you've hit the #1 thing about you. You're honest.
Again, that's coming from my family, I think, something they pounded into me as a kid. And,
what would happen if you lied in your family?
I would just feel too bad. I start feeling bad, you know?
Did you ever?
Oh, sure I did. You know, you figure out what you can get away with, what you can't.
And what was the punishment?
Listen, there's no worse punishment than a look from a father who's disappointed in you, you know? I don't care how many months I have to stay in my room. That one look, you know, crushed me.
Let's go back to Thelma and Louise. Tell the story of getting that part that would change your life, professional life.
I went and read with Gina, and she was really good to me, and Ridley was good to me, and it was just a very fun afternoon, you know, hitting the ball around.
Simon says, everybody down on the floor.
I actually didn't hear it till about a week later, but it didn't matter. I wasn't worried, I wasn't sweating it, even though it was something that was very important to me. I just felt like this one was going to work out. It was going to work right, and it did.
For a sex scene, you're very tender. Are you aware of that? Very tender, very tender. Do you remember how you start with her? And this couldn't have been in any script. You play the hand game, right?
Right. That was something that was ad-libbed at the moment. Gina came up with that, actually, because we needed some kind of segue, we felt, where they were just becoming friends first, you know?
Getting to know each other.
Yeah. Getting to take notice in each other. Yeah.
It's very sweet.
Yeah, I thought so. I felt that at the time.
I see in your characters where your guy is looking and he wants things to be done fair and really gets steamed if it's not fair. Does that resonate with you?
I found what truly shapes an individual more than what they've succeeded at, but it's what they failed at and how they've made adjustments from there. And that's always, getting back to characters, that's very interesting to me, you know? What are their weak points? What do they not understand? I think that defines a character more than what he's capable of.
Let's go to A River Runs Through It, where I think the character does have some holes.
The holes were really that he was faking everything. What do I think about life? I think life is about ultimately trying to find peace. That's it. It's that simple. And this guy had a genius way of covering it, but no idea how to get there. And eventually, the rats got him, you know? The rats in the head. I just flat don't like the house rules, Murph. Let me tell you something. Redford did an amazing job with that film. He made us better than we were, or definitely myself. Absolutely.
Do you know that the thing that you say about your character is what is true of most of the characters, the signature characters that Robert Redford has played? Great surface, hollow inside. This great look, this handsome all-American look, and hollow inside. Remember the end of The Candidate? What do I do now?
Well, that goes back to that. I'm not sure it's an area I really want to get into, actually.
Was it the phrase, the all-American great looks? Is that what made you shut off?
Listen, I get very uncomfortable with the whole looks conversation. because it's true that looks do open doors, you know? They don't keep you in the room, but they open doors. And when I think of opportunity and the people who don't get the opportunity quite as easily, you know, I wrestle with that one a bit. And it was something I asked my mom when I was little, you know, because you see that people aren't treated the same. You see it, and you know it. And she, after asking several times, told me one evening, she said, well, that's because you have more responsibility. Or, not that I have, see, I get very uncomfortable with this one. Just that, be more responsible with it. Make sure you're paying attention, I think, was what she was trying to say to me. And don't take advantage of it.
Next, a movie ignites a career.
I wasn't even aware of entrances as an entity until Legend.
Hey, there's Tristan.
Your entrance in Legends of the Fall.
I knew that was coming. See, I wasn't even aware of entrances as an entity until Legends when I saw it. And here comes this guy on a horse with mules behind him across the plains. And then I go, oh, oops, I see.
I would also say that for a guy from Missouri to enter a movie that way had to be kind of a kick, too.
Ah, definitely a kick. Well, the whole movie was a kick in that way, because that's where I'm most comfortable. Get me outside, you know, put me in a suit in an office, and you can see, or put me in interview with the vampire gear, and I'll tighten up on you. But out in the country, yeah, I feel very comfortable there.
So, why do Interview with a Vampire?
Just to see, you know, just to see if you can do it, for one. It was just about a guy trying to figure out who the hell he was, you know, what am I here for, you know? And that was interesting to me.
What were you feeling at the time that led you to Seven?
I just had this feeling about looking at myself and contemporaries and just my friends. We were at this spot where getting cocky or something, like we had the answers, you know, coming from our little circle that we've been coming from. And I saw that in this guy, you know. He was so sure of everything that he spoke of, but he was, actually, he knew nothing, you know.
Get out! Hey! Get out! Hey, man, I'm sorry.
It's impressive to see a man feeding off his emotions.
You mentioned your generation or your group. We were lucky to have the world in flux in the late 60s. Everything was changing. But it identify us. You guys seemingly have nothing to bump up against in this world. But that's why we don't know who you are.
I would say, if anything, who we are is trying to figure out who we are. I'm not sure we know, you know? Listen, I'm not the spokesman for wasted youth, you know, but I think it's a generation that's very affected and feels a little lost, you know? And so I think that's why all the tough guys, the thing with gangs, clinging to gangs and clinging to guns. And it's funny, when I was starting acting, I remember, and I fell into this as well, but we all wanted to be De Niro or Mickey Rourke, you know? I'm a hick redneck from Missouri. I'm trying to be De Niro, you know? So I'm going, you know, that look, right? He does that because he has to. He's broad right here. I got this pencil neck, and I'm doing this, like I can't do this. But I see this trap all with the young guys because we want to have that toughness and being able to pull the strings and not being affected, not letting people get to us. I think there's something there.
Brad, I think
right off the cuff.
When you talk about playing tough characters, I immediately think of Sean Penn. He's about as good as your group as there is, right?
When I watch the young guys, I watch myself, I can see direct influences, you know? He was the one guy who was around our age that we could look at and said, yeah, check out The Ugly, you know?
When you say check out The Ugly, I think what you're saying is, and what you admire is, that he's willing to play unlikable guys.
Unlikable guys, let's see what's behind there, right? Let's give him some feeling, let's understand a little bit of it. It's very interesting. But he's the most powerful thing we've had, I feel. And definitely everything now can be traced to him, is what I say.
I have this theory that people who become very successful actually do know it's going to happen to them. When they're very young, they know that they're special.
Special, I'm not real comfortable with the word special, but somewhere, so I was just having this conversation with someone who said exactly the same thing. And yes, there was that feeling as a kid that something big, you were being prepared for something big. But the funny thing is now I don't even feel like I've found it yet, yeah?
Now, of course, people would say, if what's happened to you isn't it,
yeah,
this is pretty good it.
Yeah, now listen, I understand that, but that's coming from the outside, looking at the shell, the exterior, all the things that's spinning around you. I went, a little round-faced boy, and I left everything I knew, and I went to this place, and I drew the winning ticket. I hit the lottery,
Okay, that's it for our look at 4 people at the very top of the American movie industry.
We want to thank Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, Steven Spielberg, and Brad Pitt for spending some time with us.
I guess they haven't seen all of our reviews.
That's it for this special program. Until next time, the balcony is closed.
Hotel accommodations provided by the Omni Berkshire Place, perhaps New York's most intelligent hotel. The Omni Berkshire Place, anything but typical.